Hello and welcome to this episode of the Wired BioHealth podcast. My name is Jacqueline Hall and I am joined by your show's host, Dr. Evelyn Higgins.
Hey, Jackie.
How are we doing today, Doc?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I am so good. I'm excited for today's guest.
Yes.
I think this is probably the first one that we have as a titan of industry, but also a friend of Wired BioHealth. So I think it's going to be a great conversation, all things behavioral health and how that really plays into your professional life and all the success that he's experienced and his personal story as well.
Right.
So today we're going to be joined by Cesar Wurm. He is the Vice President of Commercial Premium Brands of IHG Hotels and Resorts. He says, like many of us, I've experienced tough times, from losing my mom at a young age to battling addiction. But these challenges have also made me a stronger, more empathetic person. After becoming sober in 2014, I've gained so many valuable insights and perspectives on life. I've learned to appreciate the little things and show compassion towards others. Cesar, I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Honored to be here. And I love the word titan. I'll tell my daughter that later on.
So say, come on, Dad. It's true, Cesar. Give yourself the credit. You're a bigwig.
So tell us about kind of how this relationship started between Dr. Higgins, Wired BioHealth, and you, Cesar.
Yeah, it was unexpected in a way. On the opening you mentioned that I've been sober. So as part of my sobriety journey, I just, like to read and listen to podcasts. And then I was listening a podcast where Dr. Higgins was a guest, and she was speaking about biomarkers and giving her perspective on, the addiction journey that's just not necessarily a clear cut, but how insightful, the offering that you have at Wired, for addiction provides. And that really caught my attention because I was starting to kind of write my own little journey to myself. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. I'd love to learn more and see how that relates to my personal story. So I reached out to her, really not expecting a response, but she was very kind to get back, and we started, stay in touch. I did my biomarkers, which was very enlightening, and then also going through my program right now.
Right. So, Cesar, whatever you're comfortable with, if you would share your story of how you started out as a healthy individual and wound up where you were in your addiction spectrum.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so it's interesting a little bit. I think it goes into two buckets. One that's the unknown and unexpected that just kind of progressed, and one that looking back and the environment that I grew up and how I always had the propensity towards drinking, really that kind of was obvious. And, my dad is an alcoholic, so I grew up in that environment. Mm-hmm. And, sadly, he never, got help. So now he has Alzheimer's and so that was the entire piece. So I started experimenting and drinking and living a lifestyle that was always very centered around drinking because that was normal in my household. And then I start following that behavior, and I'm somewhat of a risk taker too. So I think that kind of added to the to that side of things. So I was being very, was kind of going to nightclubs and drinking around 14, fairly heavy, and that carried on to college. And within the hospitality industry, I've been in the sales arena for my entire career, and within my job, there is always an opportunity if you're open to it, right? To find alcohol and incorporate in your daily lives, from entertaining customers, having receptions, trade shows, you name it. So there's always something, and then it became a norm. And I think probably as many addicts, it kind of evolved. And I really have a hard time reflecting, seeing when it really went from, something that was possibly socially acceptable to really a problem. And then it came to a point where, my life was falling apart, right? I was being very fortunate that I have a wonderful wife, and we had a daughter at the time. She was like 2 years old, and I was really living a double life where I was hiding, drinking, lying, and really planning my entire day around, when can I get the next drink? And then thankfully one day around, really, I start thinking about like the pain that I had as a kid growing up in a household with an alcoholic dad. And then I realized that, listen, you're doing exactly the same, if not worse, than you resent your dad for. And that opened my mind to start looking for ways to get help. And then, wonderful family to support me. And that's how it kind of evolved and began my journey to sobriety.
That's so incredible. And for high performing individuals such as yourself, it can be kind of that gray area of when did my drinking become problematic? Because I don't know if this is true for you, but maybe there's a lot of individuals that they didn't have that criminal justice piece that forced them to stop. Maybe they didn't lose their home or their family. So it becomes this very much honesty inventory of, is this a problem now? And it's wonderful that you kind of had that, for lack of a better term, spiritual awakening, saying, what am I doing in this minute?
Yes, that's a great point, because it was interesting. In the beginning of my journey, I was going religiously to AA, and then it was interesting just kind of seeing all walks of life there. And to your point, you see people that they lost everything. And some people lost everything not only once, but twice, right? And really took them to lose family, house, become homeless, go to jail, to then think, okay, perhaps I need to do something about it. So it's really puzzling. That's something, I don't know, I would love to hear your perspective. Because sometimes it's not that anyone wants to be an addict, right? I haven't met anyone that says, hey, I want to be an addict, right? You may enjoy the highs and all that, but no one enjoys to be in that space. But a lot of times it's so foggy that, my rock bottom was relatively low, right? In comparison to what I've heard and what I've seen. Thankfully, I didn't lose my family. I didn't lose a job, and never never got into an accident, anything like that. So very, very thankful. But that could easily have happened, right? I got very, very fortunate. And, I would love to see if there's any thoughts onto why, I don't know how that come about, why some people take so much to open up and kind of have some sort of clarity to open that window. And some people maybe a little bit, I don't know, sooner, I guess.
I think from what I know about our exchange, Cesar, you were much more self-reflective. You weren't doing look at the other guys, look at him, look at her. They're doing the same thing. They're my peers. You were looking at you saying, because the first time that we had a conversation, you mentioned your daughter and you told me how you grew up and you said, I don't want this for my daughter. So you took on that role as a parent saying this will stop here. Whereas most people justify, this is how I was brought up. I made it through. And still want to pacify themselves rather than say it stops here.
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And you've done everything for that. I mean, you really have. You were sober when we started working together. You said, I want to get myself further down the road and I want to see from the data why all of this began. And we did, right? We looked at all of those points to see. And you understood, and I have a child, so I want to make sure we're not repeating this.
Yes.
So that's the big difference in you, in that honesty inventory of, doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. It matters what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And in your position, you could easily say, it's too rough. I'm expected to be at these functions. I have to go to these events. if I'm not drinking, what are people going to say? So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. At the beginning, it was very hard.
Sure.
Because it took me a long time to overcome my own self-bias, my own shame. And so in the beginning, I didn't say, hey, I'm sober, or yeah. So it was interesting. It was just kind of navigating to like, hey, I'm not drinking today, and really whatever it took just to not do that day. And to me, I think, to your point, Dr. Higgins, I think that it really came down to having a clear delineation. To me, it was like it became a simple choice. Either I choose to drink and have that, or I choose my family. And when I had that in my mind, it was never hard decision. I mean, it was hard perhaps to overcome it, and
Sure.
We have the desire to drink, but when it came time to make the decision, that was no negotiation, right? I didn't have to negotiate with myself. To me, it was always, well, this is simple. And then thankfully, as time evolved, people kind of knew, and most people don't entice or don't encourage or keep asking. And then you come across, unfortunately, across my industry, I think I hear also within the law industry, there's quite a bit of problems as well with drinking. But you come across those people that say, "Oh, really? Why you're not drinking? Why?"
Right.
So that was uncomfortable for a long time. Now I just say, "Hey, listen, I'm sober. I don't drink," and then it's pretty easy. But yeah, in the beginning it was very hard, especially when you're running within the same inner circles
Right.
that you when like you're partying like a rock star. So like, how come now Cesar, that was always the last one to leave the bar, like not even touching it?
Right.
What's happened? So that was challenging.
Right. He must be pregnant.
Exactly.
And now look at where you're taking it. You do your blog, you're writing a book, you're making this, saying, take my story and run with it, because you're not the only guy, right?
Yeah. And I think it's so good when you find ways that you can get support. I think especially knowing that I remember there was someone that I came across in the meetings that I really hit it off and relate very well. And that was such a good feeling to know, I'm not alone, right? There's people that are struggling. Okay, their circumstance may be different, but just knowing that and then seeing what's possible, that is not necessarily a linear journey, to understand that there's a lot of ups and downs. There's very tough days. And, thankfully, the last few years has been really good in that regard. I hope that it stays that way for me. But it's something is a constant, but it's good to know that you're not alone, and having that gives hope. And I hope to be able to do that and help someone that may be in the situation I was a few years back.
Right.
Yeah, that's so incredible, because I think you fall into that unique category of people in recovery that can't change the people, places, and things. Because your job is so entrenched in those areas. So then you have to explore ways that you build kind of that very personal community of, maybe on the outside it's the same people, but it's not the same people that I let into my heart and in my head.
Right.
And so now I'm curious, when you came to Wired for Addiction, it wasn't for sobriety, right?
No.
You're already doing that on your own. So what have you experienced in terms of some mental health optimization as a result of working with us?
Yeah, it was great. It was very timely, because at that point, when I was working on, still working on the book, but I was working on the book, and I was right about the area where I've always wondered, what was the cause, or what are the triggers? And of course, I knew, being a child of an alcoholic, that certainly DNA is a factor. And I was just trying to learn, how much of a factor and how does that work. So that was very insightful to learn that, and seeing kind of what type of behaviors and the likelihood of them contributing to it. And the benefits have been tremendous. The program that Dr. Higgins placed me on has been fantastic because it has helped me in so many ways. Even walking this past weekend with my wife, she says, wow, I can see a big difference in you just on your energy level, how you are taking things on and how you're dealing with situations that sometimes would bring me down or be a little bit more of a challenge. And then also even unintended consequences that I'm like half mad, half happy on you because like you figure out that, hey, Cesar, you got to stop eating gluten. and I love gluten, but also, right, something that I never knew that I had, had an opportunity to do better and found ways to incorporate that into my life. And I see changes that are better. So even things that I even didn't consider as being a benefit really came as a result. And you just realize how much your mind impacts your overall health. And that's a big deal.
Yeah. And perfect example, Cesar, you know your dad's history growing up with an alcoholic. Yeah. You said, hey, let me look at these biomarkers. We find a lot of biomarkers that say this is why you started to drink, aside from the environment you grew up in. It was there for you. But this is the beauty of what we're doing today with science to understand epigenetics, knowing that this is your DNA. Boom, that's what it is. But we can change the expression of that DNA, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And I think it's wonderful to your point, for the younger generations, right? So have that for my daughter so she can see, listen, these are the things that I got to watch out for. So I know what my propensity is. I know the situations I got to avoid. And I know when something may be more, prone to get to that direction. Exactly. And having that awareness to be, from a proactive perspective. And I think that is just a beautiful thing to have the ability to do that.
Right. That's exactly what I frame it around on my TED Talk, Understanding the Biomarkers of Addiction, is if what in your youth you knew that you had a genetic predisposition, would you make different choices? Right. Yeah. So we all still get to play out our lives. But if we can have the ability to know what we need to look out for, doesn't that make sense? We still get to pass or play. But doesn't it make sense to say, hey, you're not going to process this the way the next guy does, or it's not going to have the same effect on you as the next person, and go into the game of life knowing those things?
Yes. Yes, you're exactly right. I think, every person has a different journey of awareness. And I think like we can probably all relate to that when you're growing up, right? Your parents say, hey, don't do this, but you still do it. But at least your awareness, they're much earlier that if you get in a situation, right, you can address even sooner if you start going down that route. I couldn't agree more.
Right. And we're on the beautiful part of your protocol, Cesar, where we're actually titrating down, right? Yes. We got where we needed to go. Now we're saying, okay, start removing, and this is where we are. So gone full circle. Good stuff.
Yeah. And that it shows that it works.
Exactly.
Right, to your point, because I saw the impact when we start to add it and maintaining, and then now that we're still taking it back, and I don't feel anything different, and even people, right, like my wife, notice and say, hey, you really see a difference, and that's exciting to see when someone from outside can relate to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like there have been so many nuggets on today's episode. So number one, first question, is your book currently available for purchase, or is it still in the process of being written?
It's in the process of being written. Thanks for the nudge.
As soon as we get done, back to the computer. Because I think so many people are really going to benefit from learning more about your story. And so if there's anything that we can continue to do to support the work that you've really made your mission, you have such passion and purpose for really helping people be their best selves. And we're honored to be a part of, a small part of that story for you.
No, likewise. Thank you. I think the work you do is really groundbreaking and so helpful. I think it can really change lives in so many ways, and experiencing firsthand is also you see how much is not only your life, your health, but how that trickles down not only to your immediate family, but friends. So, I mean, the good that you and the team are doing is really amazing. And I know you do a lot of work with also courts that also impacting the justice system. That's another very important work. So really kudos to you and the team.
Thank you so much, Cesar. It's been a pleasure. And if you need backup on that word Titan with your daughter, just let us know. We'll take care of that.
Okay, I may call you.
Thank you so much, Cesar.
Thanks, Cesar.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thanks. So, Dr. Higgins, that was such a wonderful episode, and I feel like Cesar discussing how he's actually been able to begin titrating down.
That's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty. Yeah. When you give your body those biosynthesis precursors, what it needs at the correct level at the correct time, that shows you can undo whatever damage has been done.
The beauty of epigenetics, we're doing it.
That's it. So if any listeners today have really identified with the things that Cesar or Dr. Higgins talked about, I encourage you to either visit the website wiredforaddiction.com or wiredbiohealth.com. Also call the office. We literally answer that phone 24/7, 365. So the number is 1-888-841-7099, and we look forward to helping you be your best self. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.